If it's truth and inspiration you're seeking, welcome to Frankly Speaking with Frank Portinari. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Frank Portinari, the podcast that gains access to real and inspiring people. So let's dig, let's delve, and let's discover. Let's engage, let's inquire, and let's experience the fascinating life of today's guest, Tim Scott. Tim, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Thank you very much for having me on, Frank. I really appreciate it.
No, you're more than welcome, my friend. Before I go any further, I'd just like to make a few announcements. Firstly, I'd like to dedicate this podcast to a very, very special gentleman who we've sadly recently lost. And of course, that gentleman is Sir Tom Moore, a man who in his younger years volunteered to fight for his country, stepped up when he was needed, and again in later life he stepped up once again, and I think a great inspiration for every generation, be that young or old. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor, which is Myson's Building Company, a company that's been built on good traditional family values. Equally, I'd like to thank the people who've supported us today to get this podcast up and running. So again, thank you very much to Raw Media Solutions. So this is where it all begins, Tim. This is where the interrogation begins, so to speak. And again, I welcome you again. So let's get down to business. Tim, I'd like to start off with finding out some of your background, where you grew up, your family, etc. So if you could give us some feedback on it.
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning, I suppose. I was born actually in Swindon, and within a week I moved to London, if you like. We had moved, my mum had, and I basically grew up, shall we say, in and around London, moving from mainly east, but moving to the south and all sorts of parts as my mum was trying to gain work and stuff like that. So that's like my location foundations, if you like. So London, I consider my home, if you like. I sort of grew up in a single parent family. My father actually come over here from Northern Ireland. And was very successful, but him and my mum didn't stay together. So I'm your typical sort of single parent kid, should we say? And yeah, that's just a rough sort of foundation there of my growing up, should we say? I did spend a lot of time as well in Northern Ireland, as my family was sort of quite broken. I would go over to my dad's side of the family, spend a lot of time over there. That had consequences, missing school and all sorts of stuff, but I really had nowhere to stay. So I went to and fro from Northern Ireland to London.
But your education was mainly gained in London. It's here in London that you went to school, etc. Your whole of your schooling?
Yes, yeah, it was.
Okay. And siblings? Were any siblings?
No.
No, 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 just yourself. You're a spoilt child, basically, Tim. That's it. I understand.
That's it, isn't it?
So, education-wise, did you study specifically for something that you wanted to do, or did you just see school as somewhere you had to go?
School for me was probably my first fight, shall we say. And I grew up, I was the kid at school that never had a school uniform. My mum couldn't afford it at the time, so I wore a tracksuit that was sort of the same colours as a school uniform. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fruit the loom job. You know, those old, I forget what they're called now, but those old sort of sandal PE. Do you remember those sort of PE shoes you used to get?
Plimsolls?
So that's the one that, yeah.
Plimsolls, yeah. I suffered them as well, don't worry.
Obviously, that came down as well. I got a lot of bullying, and that obviously affected me. I am also dyslexic, and I was deaf for a year without the school knowing. So that'll tell you the standard of the school I went to. I actually learned to lip read at school without anyone knowing it.
Right.
So, that's something in my life that I haven't really shared with a lot of people. But yeah, that was for a whole year until I had a simple procedure, which was grommets, and it fixed my hearing. But yeah, the teachers didn't know. They just used to send me out of class because I didn't get anything, obviously because I couldn't hear. So do you know what I mean? School for me was a real challenge. I really got nowhere. I was sat outside the class most of the time, not because I was naughty, but I was considered, I suppose, thick. Where nowadays you would sort of like have a few more opportunities if you had that upbringing. You know what I mean? So yeah, school was challenging, really challenging.
What age did you leave, Tim?
I actually left about when I was 15, and I was working at the age of 15 as a cleaner with my mum to try and make a bit more money. So the more houses she cleaned, the more money we got from me and her. Throughout that time as well, we faced sleeping on sofas, homelessness, me and my mum. She always, like, I never fought my mum, you know. I'm not saying she's a bad mum, she's the best mother, you know, I could ask for. But just the times were challenging. Yeah. You know, real challenging. So
what opportunities did you have for leisure, if you like, away from that environment, whether that be after school or even when you'd finally left school and you'd found early employment? What kind of things did you do to relax?
I suppose I've done a lot of fitness. I think that was the consequence of being bullied as well. Yeah. I thought, do you know what? If I can't hear, I can't spell, I'll get you another way. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I used to run a lot.
Well, that comes in handy because you could always run away, couldn't you? I suppose when you was being bullied. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I used to do the very odd bit of boxing and bits and bobs to try and build my confidence up. I used to actually, my first sort of sport that I took seriously was Taekwondo, which I've done for about 3 years. And my mum really supported me in that because she saw the consequences of bullying. So, yeah, that I always respect Taekwondo. I don't do it anymore, but, you know, it's my first combat sport, should we say. So, yeah. So
clearly, as we can see by your surroundings, you did go on to join the British Army eventually. So were there any other forms of employment before you joined the Army?
Yeah, I was a roofer, well, a labourer for a roofing firm.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was just phenomenal. I loved that time. I was going to go on and actually do that. The guy I worked with, even though he was a Millwall lad and I was West Ham, but you know, he was
dangerous being on the roof at the same time, surely.
Yeah, you know, and back then, obviously, there wasn't as much health and safety as there is now. Yeah. So, you know, we would hump up and down on the ladders, like, and run across the beams and stuff, jumping to all sorts of stuff. And I loved it. It was physical. Yeah. I felt like I was achieving something by building, you know, finishing roofs or helping to contribute, you know, to building roofs and stuff. And it was, yeah, that was my main sort of job. I went in and out of other labouring jobs. I sort of got a bit bored, and I started to really feel that sort of intention of the military probably at the age of, I would say, 16, 17. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, did you have any? Were any of your family members of the armed forces at all? Did you have a history in the family of joining the armed forces, or were you the start of that?
Yeah, huge history. Obviously, Northern Irish Protestant, pro British family.
Yeah, I suspected that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. You know, the history of my family being in the forces is quite phenomenal. But not just that. I won't say who, but members of my family as well that served in, let's say, the special police, if you like, in Northern Ireland, and other bits and bobs. So yeah, we had a huge history all the way back to my great grandfather as well, who was in World War One, World War Two. So yeah, I was just one of many, shall we say, that carried on that tradition. So yeah.
So how old were you when you joined up? How old was you when you enlisted into the army?
Originally, I was 17 when I enlisted, and then got in by I was about 18, and then I stayed in for sort of 4 years at that time, or 3.5, because you only had to serve 3. I then left for a period of time, and then rejoined again.
Okay.
So yeah.
So during your first period in the army, then obviously you'd gone through basic training. Where was that done? Was that done inside England or elsewhere? Was that England?
Yeah, mainly up in Catterick.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of people who'll be watching this who served will know Catterick is, let's say, a gloomy place up north. No disrespect to Northerners, but a gloomy place up north. That has its own weather system. And it is just dedicated to training, especially infantry units, should say. And it's just a huge place, and they've got plenty of hills to run you up and plenty of logs to carry, you know. And I think that stage going into training, I'll be honest, with training, I loved every minute of it. And if I could go back tomorrow just through training, I would.
I think you would. Yeah, I suspect you would. Yeah.
Because I loved it.
So when you weren't training, I'm assuming you spent some time in Harrogate.
No, because
you never went. You were a soldier who never went to Harrogate.
No.
Every soldier that I ever met or have ever met that was based at Catterick at one time had been drunk and been a nuisance in Harrogate.
No. That's quite far. We used to go to York. Where else was it? Doncaster? Was it? No, not Doncaster. Darlington. We used to go out.
Okay.
Yeah, Darlington. And I used to get called a southern softie by all the women out there. But there you go.
Like you call them northern monkeys.
Yeah. The horrendous place to go out, mate. It was a time when it was like, I think it was like £5 to get in, drink all you want. You know, those sort of things. Yeah. So we used to just go and get trashed and fight up there.
Where was the first place that you served overseas?
I suppose non-operational would have been the Falklands. Obviously, that wouldn't have been, obviously, as the conflict was 1982.
Yeah. It's a distance and a half, isn't it, to go?
Oh, yeah, it's a hellish plane journey, and it takes about 24 hours because you have to go to the Central Islands and stop there and then go on from there. And that was really fascinating for me because we still carry live ammunition because we do patrols to, deter Argentinians from trying it again. And that was a kind of good warm-up, should we say, because we're carrying live ammo. We got into the feel of things, and it's quite harsh conditions, especially if you're there in the winter. The Falklands is a hellish place, and it really gave me an insight just on conditions alone what war would be like, because I thought back to those brave men that fought in 1982 against them. And it really gave me sort of like a good starting point where I thought, right, there's more to this than going, shooting a weapon, having a cup of tea.
Being soldiers,
Yeah. So yeah, that was the first sort of place I went to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So then obviously we move on to your first place where you experienced, hostile fire, so to speak.
Yeah. So that would have been obviously Afghanistan.
Yeah.
In the time of, there was a period between, I would say, probably 2008 to 2010, where it was quite hostile. Previous to that, it'd been very, very hostile, but it was really ramping up with the Taliban. And I was on Herrick 11, which was a winter tour, which is traditionally meant to be quiet, meant to be. Little did we know that going into that, into Afghanistan and that we'd be involved in one of the biggest operations since I think the Second World War, which was Montserrat. So yeah, that was a real eye opener, Frank. Honestly, like Afghanistan shaped my life from that point, I think.
Yeah.
And just if I can talk about just like the process of going there and stuff like that.
Please do. I will be fascinated to listen.
To go there, a lot of people think, you just sort of get up and go. It doesn't. It can take anything up to 6 months to a year training prior to that particular Herrick or that particular tour that you go on. And you're a lot of time away from home prior to even going to Afghanistan. This is something that people don't see. You're away doing, like, should we say, practice runs, training and going through all sorts of scenarios, especially IEDs, how to deal with them and such things to build your confidence. So when you get in theatre, that you are ready. So prior to that, your family hasn't really seen you much. You're getting your frame of mind is preparing for the conflict, should we say. And then when you arrive in Afghanistan, and that smell that I can even still smell today, there's a certain smell and there was a certain vibe there. And I remember when we got into Bastion, which is a main camp at that time, there was, I think, a helicopter just landing and it was taking casualties off at that point. So it was almost like that scene off of Platoon when the new guys arrive and they're taking guys off the helicopter. That's exactly what it was like,
right.
And guys screaming and all sorts of stuff, and that was like, well, we're here. But at the same time, we were buzzing. I couldn't sleep nights before, not because I was worried. I just wanted to go and do my job. I wanted to test myself and all the lads around us. I wanted us to see how much we could be pushed, in that environment. And it's just something unbelievable, Afghanistan, for me. It was.
I think when we see the adverts on the television, to join up, I think they're very good. I think they're very professional in the way they go about it. And I take the point that, for example, the Royal Navy one, for example, where it shows a young man from a northern town and he goes all around the world and he picks up a trade and so on. And I can see where that comes across as very glamorous. And I know we have to make it attractive to get young men and women to join in the first place. But as you clearly know, that there is the other side to it. There is the more dramatic, the more human, emotional, and psychological side to it. So if I can, and this isn't to deter anybody from enlisting, by the way, this is just taking the opportunity for somebody that's experienced these situations to forearm people, not forewarn, forearm people should they wish to enroll into any of the forces. So, for example, can you give us a rough idea of not necessarily your first day that you were there or your first morning, but for a start, what does it feel like growing up? I beg your pardon, waking up in a totally foreign environment, and preparing yourself for that, for that day, your kit, your weapons, etc. and not knowing what it is you're going to go out there and face?
It's amazing. At the same time, it's very soul destroying, if that makes any sense. So you battle between your mind, because obviously when you first get there and you start settling in, bedding in, as we call it, you know, there's a lot of things that take your mind off it, should we say. So you get used to the heat. You do some stuff in a main camp, quite a safe area, and you get used to everything. So psychologically, you're getting used to the environment, you know. And then when you actually get to I was in a PB, which is a patrol base, which is a very small base. So you get your FOBs, forward observation sort of places, and then you get your PBs, which is your patrol bases that are very small. And once you land in that and the reality hits, you feel alone, but at the same time, you've got really your family next to you, because I didn't have much family. So those guys right left of me became my family anyway. Do you know what I mean? And the scenario for most, not all, but most people that were in my unit anyway, was similar. You know, they had created a family. They felt like we were together, and we did. I suppose at the time we felt confident and unstoppable. That's until the first range goes down the first round, sorry, goes down range, and then things change. When rounds are coming towards you, you can be the hardest man on earth. You will, if you don't mind me saying this, shit yourself. You will. You will feel very, very scared. You will just be in a place you've never been. Do you know what I mean? So alert, at the same time so scared. And I'm not afraid to say that, you know, the first time I got in contact, which would have been probably just firing at our base or our PB, which used to happen probably 2-3 times a day. The Taliban would have a pop, and then you would engage them back. They would withdraw, and then they would try and hit you again. That felt okay because it was in the patrol base. You know, I thought, yeah, you know, we've got these sort of HESCO walls, we'll be all right. But shortly after that, they came at us with a anti-aircraft weapon, hitting the patrol base. And I've never seen a load of men shit themselves so much as that time. Even the boss we had at that time came running round, as in just screaming like, get on the floor sort of thing. And yeah, that really sort of got us ready for going then out on patrol. So yeah, it's a mixed feeling. It is a mixed feeling, and it's hard. I suppose it's hard. Just fast forwarding quickly, it is very hard when you come back to switch off from that feeling. So that's, you know.
This is going to be a personal question now, and you don't have to necessarily over elaborate if answer it at all, because I know you're very proud of your time in the army. And I know how close you feel about your comrades, etc. When you come back from an operation, or even if your base is attacked and you do lose a friend, you know, as you refer to as a member of your family, and they are either severely injured to the point where they're handicapped in some way, or they've lost a limb. Clearly there's mental health problems as well. But when you actually lose a friend, again, a member of your family, when you wake the next morning and you get your kit together, and say your weaponry, has there ever been a time where that discipline kind of was put to one side, and all you had on in your mind was to go out and avenge your friend stroke family member, you know, and basically kill as many people during the course of that day? Or was the discipline that good that maybe you didn't even have time to have your own personal thoughts? You had to work as a unit, you know?
like at this time, just to explain, I was a lance corporal, but I was actually doing a role of a full screw, so a corporal, yeah, as we call full screw in slang. It just worked out like that. The situation did. So I had to try and get the lads to keep that discipline and to crack on. But then again, that anger can also be used, if it's used correctly, you know, in a disciplined way, we can actually, you know, annihilate the enemy as well. Do you know what I mean? So this is something I admire about the British Army. I've worked with other forces, and I really do admire the British Army. And this is a very important point that you brought up, is we do have that discipline. There is anger inside us when you go to bed and you hear that, you know, one day we had 3 guys dead, yeah? And you hear that. And it was done by an Afghan policeman who opened up fire inside a base. When you're meant to be helping these people, you can imagine the psychological impact on my lads down where we were. We were angry to the point we didn't believe it at first. We couldn't take it in. And then we were seriously angry. And then in the morning, when we had to go and do something or whatever it may be, we had to try and control that anger, that discipline. But that being said, whenever things like that happen, I would say the Taliban got a bleeding nose. Just put it that way. And we would wholeheartedly go into it. And, you know, just I don't think I've mentioned this, but I served in the Grenadier Guards, which is a fine, disciplined regiment. And discipline is probably one of our strongest points. I would say people will, you know, argue against this, but I will say against a lot of regiments, we are super disciplined, probably sometimes too much, but we are super disciplined. And that really did play out in Afghanistan for us to keep our composure.
Right. What period did you serve? What length of period did you serve in Afghanistan, Tim?
6 months. So normally a tour is around 6 to 7 months.
Okay.
Give or take, yeah.
So you'll have to explain this to me, which way round this was, because I know that you volunteered to fight alongside some of the Kurdish forces as a result of, well, the disgusting treatment that ISIS, you know, we're using on vulnerable women and children, etc., and enslaving people and so on. So I know you did do that, but just so I get this in the right order, was that before you were carrying out the close protection duties, or after?
Yeah, it was well, in between, to be fair. So up to that period, 2015, and leaving in 2012, the military, I had worked abroad.
Okay.
In close protection, in maritime security, and in Iraq as well, on land, doing convoys and stuff. And then I was, after the Kurdish thing, I had gone and worked in London for high-end people. When I left the military in 2012, there was a surge in attacks across, like, near Somalia on ships. Just to explain maritime security, maritime security is normally you have a small team that boards the ship, and basically the ship will be going through a pirated area. So that could be anything from the edge of sort of the Indian Ocean all the way up to the Red Sea. At the time that I was working, it has got a lot smaller now. And we would have 3 to 4 guards on there protecting the ship from Somalian pirates, basically, that would try and hijack the ship. And that's what really maritime security is. It's basically ex-military guys looking after a ship. And yeah, that's the best way to really describe it.
Were there times when they actually wanted to take the whole ship? And in order to do that, would they kill the crew members?
The basic sort of theory behind it is, by having us on board, we prevent them hopefully from doing that. But their main aim is to take the ship, and it would go off course. So it would have obviously the course, it would be going from A to B. It would go off course straight towards Somalia. They would then hold that ship Normally, the crew are treated quite well, as in they would get fed and watered, obviously not in the best conditions, but as a hostage situation, I've spoken to guys that have been captured by Somalian pirates and they were treated okay, even with phone calls back home to their family and stuff like that, because the Somalian pirates just want the money, the ransom money that the big company pay. But as for security, a pirate has never, or pirates have never got onto a ship or tried to get onto a ship. They've given it a go, but they've never succeeded. Why security's been on there? But it used to be the kind of message that we got through intelligence and stuff when you got little intelligence updates, that if they did capture us, they would tie our hands and feet together and throw us overboard. So that tells you how we would be treated, but the crew would probably survive, yeah. And at that time as well, there's a lot of redundancy in the military. I left on my own accord, and most of us went into maritime, and I chose to go into it. The money was good, big money for a working class lad. You know, we were looking at 250, 300 a day, sometimes more, depending. And yeah, I worked for a Korean company. I left straight into that. Started to learn the trade, shall we say, in maritime, and I'd done that for quite a long period of time, and it was great because I got to see the world. You know, there was times in that period, especially, where the companies had so much money, we were having business class flights, you know, twice a month to different locations. We were going to places I've never been: Saudi, Qatar. Africa. I was working off West Africa, near Nigeria, Togo. It was just phenomenal. I got to travel, you know, and sometimes ships wouldn't come in and I'd be in a hotel for a week getting paid, eating and, you know, sitting in a beautiful hotel. It was a great job. But throughout that period, it was quite exciting. You know, it wasn't exciting as something like Afghanistan or anything. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that pirates attacked us every time, because they didn't. It's once in a blue moon event. But I did do a task. There was a couple of tasks that I do remember out of that period, and I'll just quickly cover them. One of them was I had to take this small sort of, it's not even a ship, it was a boat, right, from Mauritius all the way to Egypt. So that's passing Somalia, Indian Ocean, all the way through it. It must have been 16 meters by 5 meters. The freeboard of where a pirate can climb. Whenever you get on a ship, you analyze what's going on. You do, you know, sort of check. And if the freeboard's high, you're sort of like, yeah, this is cool. Bit of barbed wire, happy days. It's going to be difficult for them to get on. This was a meter freeboard. So you could step off a skiff, which is a pirate boat, straight onto that. And, you know, our top speed was something like 5 to 6, I think it was 7 knots, something like that. Very slow. It took us a month. And we had a couple of close calls with that. No rounds fired, but showed weapons, and they disappeared. That was sort of our procedure. We would show the weapon to the pirates. If you saw them coming in, you would then fire a couple of warning shots, you know, and then if something came back at you, then you would engage them. Or if they tried to, you know, climb on the boat, obviously as well, ship, then you would engage them. But I had that one, which was a bit sketchy, and then I went on another one, which was unarmed, and this was like in the early days, and they didn't have a contract to have weapons, so we were on this ship with nothing, right? And we had to make weapons, and we used to make Molotov cocktails to be able to throw onto the deck. Depending on the ship, obviously. If it's gases, obviously you wouldn't do that. But, you know, depending on the ship. And we would make different sort of traps and all sorts of stuff. And we actually made a fake weapon, which was made out of like a Coca-Cola bottle, bit of wood. And that trip, we had pirates come straight in. It must have been 8 skiffs. And I showed the weapon. It was completely fake. And I thought, if you shoot now, right, I'm going to have to make a bang, you know, like there was nothing we could do. But they saw the weapon, they went. So it works. So yeah, that was adapting and overcoming, I suppose. But you know, maritime's not as sketchy as my time in the army. Honestly, it was a very pleasant job, to be fair, and I quite enjoyed it. We were paid super well at the time, and like I said, got to travel. I then went in 2014. I had a period in Iraq, and I worked on convoys near Nasiriyah down in South Iraq. Sometimes doing airport runs to Basra for a company, and that was good. We got a half decent wage, accommodation, food. And you were with like-minded people. And I think this is a big point as well, Frank, that I'm with like-minded people. I'm not in an environment that's alien to me, which is civilian environment. I left the military, but I went into an environment that was still militarized, you know? You still, you know, had to sign your weapon out. You still had to wear a rig, like you see there, you know? You still had to do these things. So it was like comfortable at that point. Throughout that time, which is quite an important point, I was actually living in Thailand. I decided to move to Thailand. Money went further. I could hold a bank account there. I love the place anyway. Obviously, my wife at the time that I met over in the UK was Thai anyway, so it suited the family at the time. I had a house over there, a car, and I started to build a life in Thailand, which was almost like paradise, should we say. You know, I was near a beach. You couldn't ask for better. And I was loving it, really. But a lot of things started to go downhill from that point. But I'm sure we can talk about that a bit further.
So at what stage then for events that were taking place elsewhere, clearly motivated you to offer your services, volunteer your services, and that is the uncomfortable and horrible situation that was happening to those Kurdish women and those children. At what point did you feel so motivated, if you like, to become involved in that and offer your services?
I can remember it clearly. I was sitting there, and I was back in the UK at this point. Relationship with my wife at the time was rocky as hell. And my daughter, obviously, and I was sitting there watching a Channel 4 program about Yazidis. They're an ethnic group, obviously, in northern Iraq that were just getting annihilated by ISIS with the horrible acts, you know, of rape, torture, and all sorts on innocent people. And I saw this one guy. What he was doing, he was walking from the Kurdish area, going into the ISIS area, rescuing women, and coming back by himself. A Yazidi guy, brave guy, and it brought me to tears. I was sitting there, tears running down my face. And I was working just in a normal sort of security role at that point. I'd sort of settled a bit. And I thought, I can't do this. I can't sit here, you know, with some of the skills I have and not do something about it. Now, at this point, terrorism in the UK was quite high. People were irate about what was going on. And I just thought, I've got to be part of this, and I've got to do something, you know. And that's when I literally, within 2 weeks of that thought process, went. And that really was mentally the hardest thing I've ever done, because of the process of, people forget I had a daughter, you know. And one of the hardest things I'd done on the day I left was I lied to all my family. They know obviously now, but I lied to all my family, a white lie if you like, and said I was going to Dubai, back into working in maritime, and Dubai was a normal stop where you go on to other places or whatever. And I remember hugging her, and I thought, I'm not going to see her again. But my philosophy has always been that if I can give my daughter somebody to be proud of, because I can't give her money, money doesn't interest me, never has, then this is the ability, or the chance as well, to show her that you can fight against evil, you can fight against the odds, if you like, because that's what the Kurds were at the time, completely against the odds. ISIS was ruling most of the Middle East, you know. And yeah, I also, which is a tragic mistake of mine, but I made on a thumb drive, you know, as you put into a computer. I had made a video to my daughter in case of my death, and I forgot to post it. So I gave it to my now ex-wife, and I said, "Can you post this for me? It's to my mate." And she had opened it and watched it, which was heartbreaking in itself. Yeah, first time I've ever shared that, and that was hard. That was hard because at that point, obviously, my family started to know that I wasn't in Dubai. I was making my way to North Iraq in a taxi going towards the front line by myself. So if I'll go through that process, if that's all right, from when I arrived in Kurdistan. And obviously I flew to Germany. I did meet with one other guy. I'm not going to talk about the groups or how I got about that, but I met with one other guy in Germany. We then arrived in Kurdistan and we met up with some other British guys who talked us through what was happening. They then disappeared back down to the front line, and we had a few days to collect some kit from the bazaar down in Suleimania, which is where I flew into. And I then made my way by myself, actually, in a taxi. Now, when I got a taxi, you can imagine, I said to the taxi driver, "Can you take me to near Kirkuk?" Now, Kirkuk at the time is an Arab area, not necessarily a Kurdish area, and was the front line of the fighting. So he said to me, "No, I'm not taking you." I tried about 4 or 5. This taxi driver said, "I'll take you halfway. I'll take you halfway, but I'm not taking you the full way. But someone there will take you on, you know." So I literally had to beg this other guy when I got halfway to then take me. And I remember sitting there and I was thinking, when I'd worked in Iraq and I worked for a company and all that, I had a little bit of support. I knew the area. I had a map, you know, of the roads and everything. I knew where things were. At this point, really, I was blind, which could have got me killed because I was going through checkpoints that were with a driver I didn't know. He could have been anyone. He could have been ISIS himself or a supporter. And as I went through every Kurdish checkpoint, I remember seeing these placards of people that were dead, as they were seeing them as martyrs, yeah? And every checkpoint had these different people. And I kept thinking to myself, if he goes one checkpoint over, I haven't got a weapon or anything. Like, I'm screwed, you know? But luckily, he did take me to where I was meant to go. A few lads met me, and I was straight on a Top Gun with a huge weapon, cutting around Kirkuk. We then got into the base. This base, actually, if people know, you know, Chemical Ali. Did you ever hear about him? Saddam's chemical guy who basically created a lot of chemical weapons and stuff. That was actually his quarters back in the day, but it had been occupied by the Kurds. So we were staying in his quarters, which was, the interior was nice. We weren't allowed near there. We were out in these sort of like concrete blocks, if you like, and we slept on the floor. But yeah, when I first rocked up there, it was like Mad Max. There was a mix between Americans, Europeans, and Brits. There was guys with, like, you know, shotguns slung over their shoulder with, you know, sort of these mad T-shirts on, like ISIS Hunter and stuff. And I just thought, what have I walked into? You know, is this just going to be a ragtag suicide mission, if you like? But it turned out that it was absolutely brilliant, and we'd done some great training with a combination of American and British tactics. And our unit that I was in was veterans only, so it wasn't non-military guys. You know, it was like some units where we were actually all had served in some form of military. Some guys had been in the Ukraine and come over there. Yeah, it was just an amazing experience, you know. And for the Kurdish people, like, I'm a huge supporter of them, so kind, and it was phenomenal, you know, when you're in Sully and they knew you're a foreigner, they knew probably, you know, why you were there. You'd walk in shops, you'd get food free, they would give you taxis for free half the time. just incredible, absolutely incredible, you know.
I know this isn't widely known, and it's great to have you here today for you to clarify this. But people probably didn't realise that when you tried to return to the UK, that there were political and legal implications for you. Could you elaborate a bit on that if you can, please?
Yeah. So again, I'd gone back after that, working in a bit of security work overseas, and I was sort of bouncing around, if you like, the world, the Middle East. And I had returned, I think, from Qatar back to Heathrow in 2017. So this is 2 years after, or about a year and a half, shall we say. And I was stopped. And I knew, because when I put my passport, you know, on the where you scan it and it comes up this big X. I was like, my time's up. They've got me this time. So even though I've done nothing wrong, I don't hold a criminal record, still don't. But you know, I was like, yeah, something's up. And there was 3 guys in suits, and I thought, right, this is it. This is the time I'm going to get stopped. My mate was waiting outside, so I texted him. I said, do one, mate, go. I'm going to be here for hours. So anyway, they said, oh, how you doing, Tim? I was like, yeah, fine. Who are you? Just come with us. Anyway, I got taken into a room, treated all right, tried to manipulate the way that special branch do, tried to manipulate certain things out of me or twist things in the interview process that I had, that was, I believe, just shy of 5 hours. Now, if it gets to 5 hours, you then go on to further questioning at a police station under the Terrorism Act, the full Terrorism Act, which then can be held at that time. I think it was 3 days without any reason. I think that's changed now. So anyway, they took my fingerprints. They got all sorts of information. There was people there from all sorts of specialist units, should we say, in there asking me certain things. And it caused chaos for me in the end, because in the end I walked away from that and I thought, oh, well, that's that then. They've done that bit. They took my laptop and they said, when you go back, because I was visiting England, so I was going back to Thailand. They said, when you go back, can you just give us a nod and we give you a laptop back? So anyway, I was in England for a bit, and the amount of harassment, Frank, you just wouldn't believe. I was followed, and that's not an exaggeration. I was stopped in my car 4 times, well, 5 times actually, in a week, and just the same guy, just, you know, asking me what I was doing. I said, why do you keep stopping me? Why are you following me? Unmarked cars, you know. And then a lot of stuff started to happen. I faced a lot of harassment by police, just generally on the streets and everything. It was really, really strange. And it's the implication of it is this, and it's like something that people don't really know about. I'm a criminal without a criminal record, even though I'm not a criminal. Does that make any sense? But that's what I am in the eyes of the law, even though I don't hold any criminal record. So I would go onto a list that would be made up of potential people that could be potentially dangerous, you know, which this list, you know, is something that a lot of my mates who volunteered would be on as well. And to clarify it and to prove it as well is when a good friend of mine died, Jack, over in Kurdistan. When we were at his funeral, they were up there taking pictures with long cameras on a hill. You know, that proves that they, you know, it's a perfect opportunity for them to see people grouped together, who was with who knew who, you know. But to do that at a funeral for me is a bit of a low blow. But there you go. That's what we faced. And still today, when I have security checks, sometimes I get denied for no reason, even though I don't hold a criminal record. I don't owe any money. I don't have anything. So, you know, why would that be? And it all comes to this. And I couldn't trust the British media. I thought, I've got to get this out there. And the only one that we could trust, believe it or not, was Fox News in America. And they'd done a blinding article, which I'll put in the comments, or maybe I could send to you, Frank, just so people could see it. And it was on the principles of all of us getting stopped. I know guys now as well that I'm not going to mention who they are, but or who they're serving with, but they are abroad and they will not come back in because of the implications of what happened. Because they're that scared that they will be persecuted because maybe they were with, let's say, for example, the YPG, which now is considered a guerrilla group. Yeah, so not quite, military. I was lucky I was with the Peshmerga. So I had official documents, a write-up of what I had achieved, and I've still got that proudly. But, some of these guys, even though for me, they're heroes, these guys. The YPG faced a lot more fighting than we did. I hold my hands up to that. But, a lot of them can't come back to the UK. I know quite a few. So that was the downside. The downside of it all. And I couldn't get a security job for ages, abroad anyway. It was very difficult.
Because of those experiences, Tim, I'm assuming that this must have taken its toll at some stage. You've described a lot of physical commitment, but you've also described scenarios where it's obviously taken a lot of psychological input as well, and as we unfortunately now know, that makes an impact on people in lots of different ways. So if you carry from your childhood the conditions that you grew up in there, albeit, as you say, your mother done her very best to make life good for you. You did have your problems, and you dealt with those the best way you could. And then obviously going into the British Army, the having to learn the discipline, and having to see and hear and feel the experiences that you had. That must have taken its toll on you, as I say, not only physically but mentally. If you could, describe your experiences in regards to your own mental health, or even the mental health of others that you've known along the way.
Yeah. Just to go back to the start, and it all sort of come in place. But from my childhood at an early age, I'd already seen terrorism. In Northern Ireland, my nan had a gun put to her head while I was in the premises by the IRA because of family connections to authorities and all sorts of stuff. And, for instance, we went shopping one day. I'm not going to say the areas for my family's sake, but we went shopping one day and the supermarket had blown up 10 minutes later completely by an IRA bomb, So at a young age, that was already there. That kind of, I would say, I suppose you could say trauma, but it had been built. And then obviously Afghanistan came around and there was, a lot of contacts. I had a very near death experience which I didn't talk about, but just quickly, we were on patrol. I had moved just slightly. We were in a line and I had moved just slightly to the right near a wall. And as I did, a sniper had shot around and it hit the bloke behind me straight through the chest. He was an interpreter. He survived, but I literally stepped that second. And you heard a bang. It was like a loud sort of bang, and it hit him straight through the chest. So I remember after that feeling like not quite right. And then I suppose, Kurdistan, there was a lot of if I'm honest, I think when I went to Kurdistan, I wasn't the full shilling anyway, if I'm truthful. If I'm going to be, this is what this is about, being truthful.
Yeah, and we appreciate it.
I think I wasn't the full shilling, because I remember when we went on a big op and people said I was like a bloody devil, It's not to big myself up or say I'm this Rambo guy, but at that particular day, I didn't care if I died. And I remember saying to my mate the night before, who was with me. Again, I'm not going to name him, but good guy, good friend of mine. He said, it's mad, isn't it? We're the only few Brits at that time that was kind of there. And I said, yeah, do you know what though? If we die tomorrow, it don't really matter. We've really accomplished something here. The fact that ISIS know that these, foreigners are coming over with no ideology, just that they want to defeat ISIS because they're evil, Yeah. I said, so it doesn't matter if we die. Do you know what I mean? And I was in that frame of mind. I think in a weird sense, I actually wanted to, because I'd already lost a lot of friends by that point. And, I think it was as well, like I said before, I was living in Thailand. At that time, a thing that I haven't really talked about much, but I had an alcohol problem when I was on leave, especially. I was also taking prescription drugs, which was just a vicious circle. So I'd go on leave, I would smash a bottle of vodka, a bottle of whiskey a day, and take like Valium you could buy over the counter in Thailand, We used to use it for sleeping on the ships, but I unfortunately got addicted to it, and I was drinking with that and all sorts. So psychologically, a bit mad, and it has affected me. I would lie and say, I would be lying, sorry, if I said it hasn't, but I don't have nightmares every night. I don't, do you know what I mean? I don't go to a supermarket and feel suddenly cold sweats and feel weird. That doesn't happen to me. But yeah, it has affected me. I would say as well, the most thing that affects me is when my mates take their life, and especially recently in 2020 when my mate Elliot took his own life. That was devastating because I was talking to him the night before and I never even realised, No. And I woke up in the morning and my mate had called me and said, I'm not going to say how he took his own life because I don't know if we've got family permission, but basically he had taken his own life, and he was the most happiest person I'd come across. And that's when I started to think, shit, this can happen to any of us, and this is serious now, because he was strong. Like outside, mentally, the guy was really strong. He actually gave me a lot of my kit when I went to Kurdistan. He was a guy who helped me with that, a London lad. And yeah, that was my biggest wake-up call. I've had many of friends, there was friends when I was volunteering, two guys hung himself. No, one hung himself, another guy shot himself in the head in America. The list goes on, Frank, honestly, and that affects me more, that I can't do anything.
Yeah.
That I can't reach out, that I can't, try to help these guys, I'm not qualified to do so, but I just wish I could do more. You know what I mean?
I need to give credit where it's due here, because, unfortunately, not everybody can, for want of a better way of putting it, this isn't the best way of pulling themselves together, if you like, having the strength to be able to pull themselves together and seek ways. I mean, I know there are traditional ways, there are numerous groups and helplines, and maybe there should be a lot more. And even by you talking today, hopefully that will inspire other people to set up support groups, and it'll hopefully help people to feel better about actually approaching these groups. Because I know people are very proud. Some people are very proud. They don't want to go asking for help. But you have found a way to. You've identified, the problems that have beset you, but you've taken a very positive approach, and you found a way of confronting those problems, and in the main, personally, I think you've defeated them as well. And I know you'll carry on doing what you're doing. So, can you please explain to us how you've done that through your extreme exercise regimes, your Thai boxing, and more recently, you moving into the world of bare knuckle fighting.
Yeah, I tried many a times and I failed, if I'm honest. Like when was it? Back in 2014, was it? Or yeah, 2014. So I was living in Thailand, and obviously I had this drink problem. I was taking prescription drugs. I was partying. I was just a lunatic. I was training in the gym. I looked healthy, but inside I wasn't. And I decided to take up running. So me being me, I identified early on, and this is like quite an important thing, I think, to a lot of veterans out there, is a lot of us have addicted personalities. That's what can make us a good soldier, good at our jobs. Is we do have an addicted personality. We will fulfill a task fully, you know, because of our addicted personality. And I identified that and realized that, do you know what? I can do something with this addictive personality. So me being me, I jump in things at the deep end. You know, I don't go in like up to my ankles. I go in over my head. And I love that. That's a buzz for me. And I remember going back on leave, and I thought, I'm not going to drink this time. I've had enough of it. So I went and entered a marathon, and I'd done it in sub 3 hours. And I thought, that's all right, considering I've been on the ship, you know, not much space to run. A week after that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do an ultra. So I've done 50K. The week after that, I've done 100K. And the week after that, I've done another 100K. And then I went on and done a third 100K. And then I've done a 24-hour run. Right. So I'd taken this time off work, and I thought, I'm going to crack this. I'm going to get this done. And obviously it stopped me drinking. And it was a fantastic time of my life. I was very light in weight, shall we say, because of all the running. But I remember doing a North Face run in the north of Thailand, and I finished 7th. Now, I'm not naturally a runner, believe it or not. I really am not. And I finished 7th. And this stems back to a deeper rooted thing, which I haven't covered, and I will go over this, Frank, just briefly, is in the military, I still feel like I failed a bit, because my biggest aim was to be in SF. I wasn't, but my biggest aim, that was all I wanted to achieve, soldiering, is I wanted to go and do selection. And I went on the pre-course, done very well. I actually took my leave, so that's a period of time you get off after Afghanistan. I took it short to fit it in with the schedule that we had at the time in battalion, because it was busy. And I went on the week's sort of CARDA, where you do a pre-selection just to see where you're at, how you are down at Hereford. And I've done pretty well. I then wanted to go on and do the selection. And when I went in there, my company sergeant major at the time didn't really like me. I'm not scared to say that, he really didn't. Just said there's no time for that. And I went, fine, I had my notice in it. And he thought I was bluffing, and I did. And that's why I left. So it was unfinished business. So a lot of it that I've done afterwards has been trying to fulfill the chance that I never got. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's where the ultra running came in. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to show people, right, that I can. I'm going to show people I can do all different types of things, and it's going to help me in the long run. But that being said, that period which I'd done that, I raised a lot of money for veterans charities. But as soon as I had achieved that, that was kind of that knocked on the head, and I went back to drinking and taking prescription drugs. We say while I was in Thailand, and yeah, that's really then last year, which was obviously the COVID and stuff like that. Obviously, H taking his own life. That was a huge wake up call for me. It was just massive. And prior to that, I was battling. So the fight that I meant to be doing, the bare knuckle fight, has been going on for about a year now because of COVID. It's been delayed. That was something to get me motivated again. I'm not a fighter. I'm not going to go out there and say I'm some sort of UFC, wannabe or something. I really am. I don't like fighting, but I do things that I don't like because I believe it grows you in character. So that's why I chose that. You see the extremes. I don't just do boxing. I go bare knuckle. It's these things. I was in Thailand in 2000. When did I do my fight? I think it was 215. I can't remember now, or 214 it might have been. But I done training for 5 weeks. And I thought, you know what, I'll go and fight a tiger just to say I've done it. So I've done that as well, and I raised a lot of money for charity, and it really does help me. And now with my training, I've given up alcohol since last year for months now. I don't even know how long it's been, and I've really come a long way. I think alcohol was my downfall. Even though I was doing the odd runs and I was feeling good, I was training, I would still go home and drink a litre of vodka to myself. And people didn't know that. I was very clever at masking it. But obviously I don't drink anymore. I've achieved or am achieving a hell of a lot in my fitness. And I feel it's just helping me, mate, really, massively.
Well, we can't see inside your mind, Tim, obviously, but physique wise, you can see the amount of work, the amount of training that you've done. So at this point, if you have a message for anybody or for our viewers, I'm sure they've gained a lot already, but if there is any advice you might want to share with our viewers, please do that.
Yeah, I would say definitely on the mental health side of things. I do a lot now with CTF motivation, which is chewing the fat, which that name came from. A term we use in the military. Chewing the fat means sitting around chatting rubbish, basically, if you like. But chewing the fat motivation is that sort of principle that I've now brought out, and it is really the advice I would give is train. Start at any level. Never compare yourself to anybody. Never compare yourself to anybody. When I fight, when I run, when I do anything, that fight, that run is against me, my mindset. That's against myself. I don't care what's in front of me. You can put a guy who's 20 stone and 7 foot. I don't care. It's not because I'm a hard person or anything. Far from it. It's because that battle's against me. And that's what I would advise people to understand, that nowadays on social media, and you see it on Instagram and things like that, where people compare themselves, to this person and that person. There's no need. You are what you are at that point. Take the small steps and you will develop. You will develop mentally. And another thing that I would say that I didn't realize, I thought being physically fit meant you were okay. Far from it. You've got to be, the balance has to be mentally and physically 50-50, if not more mentally.
At the beginning of this podcast, I said it was my aim to gain access to real and inspiring people. And I think today, this first podcast, I've certainly achieved that, or we as a team, frankly speaking, have achieved that. And I also said I introduced you as and you're fascinating, as a fascinating guest and a fascinating story. And again, I think that's been achieved, because it's certainly been a fascinating story and an insight into your life. And I thank you for sharing that, Tim. I really mean that sincerely. To finish up, what I am now going to ask is, where does Tim Scott go from here? And before you answer that, I'm hoping somewhere along the line that this is going to include you putting your experiences and your thoughts and your ideas into a book, because I'm sure there would be many, many people that would like to have a copy of that. I know I certainly would.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing is something that I am aiming towards. Obviously, being dyslexic, it can put you off, but no task is too hard, should we say? So that's something I'm aiming for. But my biggest achievement, really, or the biggest thing that I want to achieve, still to this day and from day dot, really, has been to give my daughter a father of someone, that is an inspiration, that she can achieve anything. And as long as I can do that, I'm a happy man, and I truly believe now, by helping myself, that I can help others. And that's what I really spread now. I say to people, help yourself, and then you will help others. And it definitely works, 100%.
Tim, that's fantastic, mate. I'm going to end it there. As I say, to have you as my first guest, it's gone beyond my expectations, to be quite honest. I'm sure on behalf of everybody that's watching this, we all wish you well and all the best for the future. Please carry on what you're doing, because you are, if you're aiming to inspire people, I can assure you, you are certainly doing that. That's for sure. So before I do end, I'd just like to again like to thank Myson's Building Company for helping us today, and also the team that assists me, Raw Media Solutions. So Tim, all the best, mate, for the future. And if you need a hand with that book, please contact me, and between us we'll achieve it, I can assure you. Okay, goodbye, my friend. See ya.
Cheers.